Sceptres under Scrutiny, a divine review. As we sang the song, Holy, 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 I was pulled into a scene. I glanced around and I noticed a moving line. At the beginning of the line was a throne, where the Lord sat in indescribable majesty, examining people that stood before him. Interested in the procession, I looked keenly and noticed they were pastors and preachers from different nations of the world. Despite their different appearances, each held a sceptre, representing their symbol of authority. As I appraised their sceptres, I noticed they were made of different materials, ranging from wood to gold. From the corner of my eyes, I saw the Lord move. Immediately, I turned my attention to him. The person before the Lord was kneeling with his sceptre stretched before the Lord. As the Lord assessed his sceptre, there was a stillness in the room. When the Lord lifted his right hand and placed it on the man's forehead, he permitted him to pass. The line moved and the process continued. For those who passed his assessment, the Lord placed his right hand on their foreheads. Again the line moved, and a man in elaborate regalia knelt before the Lord. As he stretched out his beautifully decorated staff, I recognized he was the Pope. The Lord looked at him, his gaze penetrating and concentrated. I hadn't noticed the flow of time earlier, but with the Pope the Lord seemed to assess him longer. The Lord spoke, "There can be no two kings." His words proceeded like as an uncontestable verdict. I watched as the words being executed. The Pope shrunk in size. He was transformed from a man to an insignificant miniature figurine unable to hold the beautifully decorated staff. The line moved and another kneeled before the Lord, and I heard, "I will test their authority. By whose authority do you rule over my people?" Interpretation. The vision begins with ministers of God all over the world standing before his throne. This depicts a time for accountability and reckoning. Scriptures tell us that we will all appear before the Lord and give an account of ourselves. 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 5, Romans chapter 14 verse 12, Revelations chapter 20 verse 11 to 13. Each minister held a scepter. A scepter is a symbol of authority. Genesis chapter 49 verse 10, Esther chapter 4 verse 11, Psalm chapter 45 verse 6. The visioner observed that there was a difference among the scepters of these ministers. While some scepters were made of wood, others were of gold. This reveals the type of vessel they are and the nature of their walk with God. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verses 12 to 14, 2 Timothy chapter 2 verses 20 to 21. The differences in the nature of the scepters could also speak of the various gifts and authorities made available in the general body of Christ, whether they are pronounced or not. There are diversities of gifts and authorities the Lord has made available in the body of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verses 4 to 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 28. In the vision, the ministers are seen to kneel before the Lord, presenting themselves for assessment. This is an act of submission and acknowledgement of God's supreme authority. God delegates authority and is therefore the ultimate authority, hence the minister's acknowledgement of his supremacy. Psalm chapter 75 verse 7, Daniel chapter 4 verse 17 and 26, Romans chapter 13 verse 1. The ministers had to stretch out their scepters for assessment as well. This is proof that the Lord will assess every man's work to prove its quality. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verses 12 to 14. For those who passed the Lord's assessment, he placed his right hand, the hand of authority. Psalm chapter 110 verse 1, Mark chapter 16 verse 19, on their foreheads. The forehead, which speaks of the mind, is the center for thoughts and a place where decisions are made. The Lord's hands on their forehead shows an approval that they are still working with the mind of Christ and in line with God's will. Romans 12 verse 2, Philippians chapter 2 verses 5 to 7, 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 16. The Pope, dressed in his regalia and beautifully decorated staff, represents him having high levels of authority. The statement by the Lord, "There can be no two kings," reveals the presence of a desire to overrule the authority of God. However, God has the highest authority. The Pope was reduced to a miniature size that was insignificant, representing the authority of the Pope or the papal system, and influence will greatly reduce and become insignificant. Isaiah chapter 14 verses 5 to 6. It could also represent God's humbling process. God humbled those who exalt themselves. Hence, we are advised to remain clothed in humility. 1 Peter 5 verse 5, Matthew chapter 23 verse 12. The vision ends with the visioner hearing, "I will test their authority. By whose authority do you rule over my people?" This reveals the Lord is not done testing the authority he has given to people. Friday, July 19, 2024. Sister I. F. E. Gamwatch.